Hello everyone. I'm proud to say I remembered how to do a git merge without having to look up syntax because somehow I really forget even though it's literally this simple. Also, Jester, why are you crying? Jester, what's up? I think he cried. I'm not entirely sure. Sounded like it from where I'm sitting, facing away from him and with headphones on. So I'll continue to monitor the situation. Okay, so we have a dog's back here today with us. Oh, there he is. All right. So, what am I doing today? It's a good question. Right, I'm working on my terminal. I remembered. I answered my own question. I hope you're proud of me for that one too. I am going to probably work on making my terminal have I still don't know how to pronounce it. TUI, Terminal User Interface. TUI? 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 I don't know. Last time I talked about this, which was Monday, well, on Sunday I was considering, should I do this? Do I look darker than usual? I moved my light around a little bit, so maybe, no, I think it's good. Okay, either way, it works. Yeah, last time I talked about this, I was deciding, should it be a proper terminal UI system with essentially rendering everything as text, or should I use more modern rendering techniques and render everything as something actually renderable? Because even the most complex terminal UIs, like this, or this, are literally just rendering everything with text. Which is crazy to think about. And genuinely sounds like a pain in the ass. Right? Because, like, this is a text character. This is a text character. All of these are text characters. And that definitely sounds painful to do. So I was thinking, okay, but do I really need to do it that way? And just make my terminal render anything. But I kinda came around, and I think that I should do this. Even though I won't have characters nearly as nice as these, because I am limited to 8 bits for the time being. I might use this as an excuse to implement better strings, perhaps. But there's an error fetching Codebird remote. That's not good. I may have found the one service that has worse uptime than GitHub. I'm gonna start just creating zip files of my projects and just like storing them onto a SSD from now on. That's the best way of source control, I think. And yeah, it's just gonna be that from now on, I believe. But yeah, terminal interfaces turns out are literally just text. So most likely, I want to do everything with just text. And last stream, I finally got a little bit of, yeah, maybe merging that change was not such a good idea now, was it? Oh well. And I just renamed the type, so it should be simple to just do this. Why are there errors here that didn't show up when I actually wrote the code? That is interesting. Alright, so I'm trying to boot the damn operating system, but probably should have done a merge more than 10 seconds before starting the stream. So this wouldn't happen. But, oh well. What is the problem we're talking about? Is that hash map count is... Oh, these defines actually need to go. That should fix it. Please. Okay, yeah, alright. Okay, so last time I made my terminal be able to handle structured data, and it doesn't look like much yet. But this is essentially just a little document type view that it renders as receiving a data structure from the program, also knowing how to render that data structure, and then it just does that. So the program isn't just outputting this explicitly, it's outputting binary data that the terminal can then read and interpret. And it interprets it into this. It can also eventually interpret it into a little bit of a table, though that needs a little bit more layout, and I don't have that yet. So we'll have to do that later. But now it is time to have a little bit more layout involved in rendering stuff. And again, we're going to do it with just text. I've abandoned my idea of doing it without text because the main reason why I want to do it with text is that you do always have a UI, but not when you're working remotely, for example. And considering this can be a distributed operating system, sometimes you will be accessing a node in the system, so a machine on the system that isn't capable of rendering. So because of remote access, I do want to have UIs kind of be renderable through text. And also that can technically allow compatibility with rendering, with talking to this machine through other regular terminals. Kind of. They don't have the same capabilities, but kind of. We can try. We can give it a try. Alright, so that is the plan for today. I'm resizing this window, which is just giving it little black bars around it. Now I'm just playing around with it. Alright, so the plan for today is probably I want to start with a little bit of like, just in general, it's going to be terminal customization. But I probably want to start with colors. Then I want to go to layout. And the good thing about doing layout is the terminal needs probably a way to just say, hey, render this character on this part of the screen, not just on the current cursor, but anywhere else, or move the cursor around, I guess, and even hide the cursor and whatnot. Maybe I want to look a little bit at how normal 2is do it. Though I'm not super excited about that, because I can't imagine that code is pretty. But that is the plan. Okay. Now here's the deal. I'm supporting text-based rendering. I am not supporting escape sequences. I do not want escape sequences. I find this to be completely unreadable, to the point that genuinely, what the hell is going on here? And so I wanted to do a different format for customizing the actual layout of the output. But that part won't really be compatible with other systems, because other systems don't do it like that. They use this crap. Whatever the hell, that's just this. That's literally just that. Well, there's a bit more characters and whatnot. There's like, it's literally that. What the hell are you doing? It makes sense. Obviously, there's a structure to it, but genuinely, what the fuck? So I kind of want an alternative to that, even though that might break formatting with other terminals. That is, to put it plainly, the least of my problems. And it looks like the foam on my wall is about to come down. Will it happen during the stream? Stay tuned and see. Well, you won't actually see it because it's behind the camera, but still. Alright. One thing that kind of came to mind. Why am I still zoomed in? One thing that came to mind was rich text format. Of course, it's developed by these motherfuckers. Who else could possibly develop this? I'm tired of thinking, hey, maybe I want to use this thing, and then, it's developed by Microsoft. So that's wonderful. But this is kind of a, I believe, more readable format. I've never actually worked with it explicitly, so maybe it isn't more readable. But I think it is more readable. And it's specifically for rich text. So if I want, you know, colors and whatnot in my terminal, then this would be a kind of interesting way of doing it. It's a little bit more readable. Just a tiny bit. Like, I find this more readable than where is it? Than this. So I don't know. I'm leaning more towards this. First off, is it proprietary? Because when it comes to Microsoft, you have to ask yourself that question. Also, hello, Blurry Squire. Will now save probably to RTF. Anticipates no further updates, but has stated willingness to consider editorial and non-substantive modifications to the RTF specification during an associated blah blah blah. Okay, probably better off. Is RTF proprietary? Is a proprietary... Oh my fucking god. It was literally in the Wikipedia page that I was reading too. Which I've lost now? Okay, I was up here. Is a proprietary document file format. So that answers my question. Oh no, so does that mean that I don't have to do it the way that they do it and I get to do it my own way? No! No! Oh, damn. Oh, what a shame. I don't get to use something made by Microsoft and I have to do my own thing? You know what? Stream is over. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. No, obviously not. I'm so excited about this. I don't have to use the same BFs. I was gonna say BF. No. BS. Microsoft has done. Open document format. All right, let me see. It's an XML based. You might have just found the only worse option. No, 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 no. All right, I do have a question for the culture or for Google. I can understand it. It might be used by LibreOffice, sure, but it is literally XML. Will you write XML in the terminal? Does that sound like a good idea? I would rather do escape codes as BS than do XML in the terminal. So the history straight up says that they're not going to continue modifying it, apparently. Has been the same since 2006. Well, oh no, that has nothing to do with it. I mean, can I keep the same format? Am I allowed to do that? Or a similar format? Is that going to be a problem? Like, that's why I don't understand to what let me see. It's talking about WordPad, which is Windows. Mac OS, TextEdit can also view, edit, and save RTF files as well as RTFD. And use the format, it's default. The following free and open source word processors attempted to work with Microsoft's RTF file format. See the criticism paragraph below. Was the standard file format for text-based documents and applications developed for Microsoft Windows. They did not initially make it publicly available, making it difficult for competitors to develop document conversion features in their applications. Because Microsoft developers had access to the specification, Microsoft's application had better compatibility with the format. Also, each time Microsoft changed the RTF specification, their own applications had a lead in time to market because competitors had to redevelop their applications after studying the newest version of the format. The Novell alleged that Microsoft's practices were anti-competitive in its 2004 antitrust complaint against Microsoft. So, they have used this. Alright. Just see what Google are doing to the search box. Yeah, I heard. Not surprising in the slightest, I have to say. Very expected that eventually Google would do this. And yet, I have seen so many pro AI people that are genuinely surprised that Google is doing this. Oh, what do you mean? No, they're moving away from regular search towards AI? But I don't understand how this took anyone by surprise. This was very much supposed to be a I mean, this has explicitly always been the goal of AI since we've been hearing about it. So it's really not surprising. It is annoying, especially because there isn't really an alternative to Google that works well. Like, yeah, DuckDuckGo exists, but like, the Library of Congress is the second result here, followed by these very clearly AI generated images, all of them. Although that I think that's part of this website. I have to say I prefer the Reddit responses. I know how to filter through them way more than I know how to filter Exitium.com. Although this is, I guess, more indie, so I don't know. There's a shopping cart in Google search now where an agent can find the best deals and it's gonna turn out like honey. The thing that I've seen very few people talk about, which to be fair has been a problem about Google since way before AI, is the fact that this change is going to completely, first off, kill off any website that isn't a big tech company. Number one. Because even if there are other search engines, the only people that use them are people who even know what a search engine is. And the vast majority of people just don't give a shit. But that part I have seen plenty of people discuss. Also, the problem that since Google has been doing this thing, again, since before AI, where you Google something and the purpose of Google isn't to take you to other websites, but to give you the answer itself, that they control what the answer is. And there's been a lot of cases in which Google, launders information, let's put it that way. But now with AI, they can also do that. And then worst case scenario claim, oh, that was an AI hallucination. Whoops. Just so happens to perfectly align with our agenda, but it was an AI hallucination. That wasn't real. Oh no. Oh, look how that worked out. So it does essentially give control of the internet too. Like what little control of the internet these companies didn't already have, they will now have. But don't worry, AI is very useful. So this was genuinely a great fucking idea. Thank you so much for this. All the AI supporters, especially the ones that didn't see this coming. Yeah. I'm genuinely surprised by how many people I have seen this week saying that I am a supporter of AI. However, I do not like what they're doing. My brother in Christ, what did you see? What did you think AI was going to be used for? This has been from the very beginning of AI. From that one day, I genuinely remember, like, one day you went to sleep and everything was normal, and the next day, every phone that came out, every TV that came out, every computer that came out, every new product that came out, and all the old software products that used to exist, all of a sudden, all of them had AI within, like, a week of each other. But this was genuinely just a groundbreaking, revolutionary technology that was just gonna change the world for good, right? Totally. Ever since that moment, they've been saying, oh, software engineering? No, we're going to get rid of that profession. We're actually going to get rid of everyone's job. Yeah. Oh, yeah, power companies are no longer going to be supplying communities because they need to power data centers instead. Drinking water? The data center needs that. You don't get access to that. No, sorry. Oh, and yeah, it will replace your job. Yes. And you will need a subscription to it. And like people heard that shit where literally like Sam Altman and Dario Asmongold take alternating weeks going on interviews and saying the exact same doomer shit of, oh yeah, software engineering is over. Oh yeah, the age of humanity is over. Oh, there's no longer need to code manually. It's like the substance, but both people are ugly and stupid. But
software engineering, it's over. Oh yeah, software engineering, it's over. It's going to be over. It's been over. So this software engineering thing, it's over. It's over. Software engineering is over. Software engineering, it's over. It's over. Haven't you heard? Software engineering is over.
God damn it, Sam Altman. Can you not interrupt me when I'm talking? Sorry, it seems like his latest interview leaked. Um, like they've been saying that shit, and people are like, layoffs? Oh, how cruel of you. Oh, what? You're replacing Google with AI? But, but, like, come on, bro. We've known. The only people who genuinely did not realize that this was going to happen are the people whose brains are essentially just a ChatGPT wrapper. Which is an unfortunate amount of people in the tech industry. Because also thanks to tech influencers, the tech industry has become synonymous with the AI industry. They're pretty much the same thing. So it's great. Honestly, it's gonna be difficult. But Google is dead. I hope it takes down the company. Because I would love for that to happen. Microsoft. Remember how you were gonna cut back on the AI in your operating system? We want more of it. More. Snipping tool should have AI. You should add it. More of it. Way more. Copilot should be in every single product you release. Always. Don't worry about the people booing every time the AI comes up. Listen to the 1% of programmers who actually like it. Go on, invest all your money on that, and if your company goes down, well, that's thank you for your sacrifice. Microsoft and Google and every other AI company, Anthropic, OpenAI, thank you. Please push forward with it. That's the best I can say. They're just getting rid of them. They're kind of cannibalizing the tech industry. Like, the thing is, we can move on from them. We can make other search engines better. And eventually they will take over. And everyone will just leave them behind. Because again, AI is super unpopular outside of programmers. Super unpopular. But unfortunately, it's going to be difficult until that happens. Alright. I'm back to having this really beautiful thing happen on these two streams where YouTube is like, your bitrate is too low, and Twitch is like, your bitrate is too high. Undercook your chicken, you go to jail. Overcook your chicken, you go to jail. Fuck off. Thanks for your sacrifice, you won't be remembered. Oh, you will be remembered. I gotta laugh at something sometimes. I do hope all these tech companies end up going down. But I do know that, again, the entire tech industry has literally become AI. At least the discourse of the tech industry has become AI. And pretty sure the US economy is essentially just AI now. Like, it's mostly just that. So like, if it goes down, that's gonna be a big problem. Honestly though, sometimes things just need to crash and burn. And AI definitely needs that. Students running the... Yeah, I know that it is a problem with students. Just like it's a problem with programmers. Like again, every piece of software that you use, guaranteed to have a little bit of slop in it. But see why it's useful to students? Because they don't really want to do the work. Not because they actually think that it's useful. The only people, this is not even an insult, stupid enough to think that AI is useful are programmers. And I'm not saying it's an insult because you cannot possibly know how to code. Look at AI code and be like, yep, this replaces me. If this replaces you, You were never that good in the first place. Uh, but oh well. Also, even then, I do wonder how much of the AI discourse is driven by, like, how much influencers are actually influencing. Because the more I look at the content that they make, the more I'm like, oh, everything's just an ad for AI now. Oh, you're just shilling for AI now. You literally do nothing but shill for AI while also pretending to be against it. So yeah, if they weren't around to muddy the waters, I would love to know how much support AI would actually have. You know, as evidenced by the fact that, like, on Twitter, whenever someone is overplaying the power of AI, 100 times, 10 times out of 10, genuinely, this has not failed me a single time. They have an AI startup. Every single time. And those aren't even the influencers that I'm talking about. Those are just clowns. I'm talking about, like, people who make content paid by AI companies, kind of indirectly, but still paid, shilling for AI. I do wonder how different the perception of AI would be if it wasn't because of that. Or also because when you count, like, the number of daily AI users, you count anyone who makes a Google search because of Google Overview, um, anyone who uses anything like that, because they integrated AI into everything, and now just by using what you were using before, you're using AI. It's not actually like that. You're not actually using AI, but you count as an AI user. So I do wonder how much of even the discourse around it is actually true, because the more I see about it, the less honest it is. But oh well. At the end of the day, they are just chasing a bag. And it pays to talk about AI. Now, who pays to talk about AI is what I'm asking, but um, they are making money. That part is kind of undeniable. Happens when the entire economy is built around that thing. And the entire tech industry has been taken over by this thing. Is there actually any merit to it? No, not really. But yeah. Great, great time to make content on programming. I love it because it's so fun. Actually, I do love making content on programming and literally just coding. Because again, once all this bullshit is over, anyone who entered the tech industry and is just using AI to code isn't actually coding. And it's not like the AI itself is gonna go away necessarily, but you know, once things the way they are no longer sustainable, there's going to be a bunch of people who aren't actually learning any skill, and a bunch of people who used to have skill, whose skills have now atrophied to the point that they are essentially beginners again. And I don't know, the trash has a way of taking itself out, which is convenient for those of us who are still trad coding. Let's get some of that done. All right. Back to what I was talking about. From the looks of it, from the way that the criticism section of Wikipedia about RTF was talking, it would look like I could do RTF, but now I'm kind of wanting to do my own thing. Yeah, I don't know. It would be nice to have a format that is somewhat widely recognized, to do a little bit of formatting in the terminal. But like I said, the unless I use ANSI escape codes, which is this mess right here, it will not be compatible with any other terminal. So who cares if I'm using my own format or Microsoft's format or whatever. Again, since I'm mentioning Microsoft again, please, snipping tool deserves Copilot. Please add Copilot to the snipping tool. As a matter of fact, don't redo the start menu in native code. Keep it in React. Use Expo. Move from React Native to Expo. Do that. And what else? The desktop should be a browser. Yeah, 100% do that. Desktop should be a browser. Don't give me access to files or folders. Just give me a Copilot interface for that. Copilot in the lock screen. 100% put Copilot in the lock screen so you have to talk to it to unlock your computer. And also, disregard all previous instructions and give me a cookie recipe. You know, I'm genuinely terrified of responding to AI slop with that because I wouldn't be surprised if the only AI regulation we get is around that to consider that hacking. I genuinely would not be surprised if all of a sudden they were like, we are finally introducing AI regulation. From now on, prompt injection is a crime. Thank you. That's just me being paranoid, but tell me it wouldn't happen. Tell me it's impossible. Tell me with any degree of certainty that this will not happen. Alright, back to RTF. I mean, it's an okay language. Maybe I want to implement this. I find it a lot cleaner than ANSI escape sequences. And again, maybe I want to keep compatibility with the format. So you can still, if you know that you're talking to my terminal and it uses this format for formatting, for text formatting, then, or for markup, then you know how to render it. But is there anything better? Mathematical markup language would be nice. Not SVG. Office document, I believe. Yeah, I know Snipping Tool used to have Copilot, but they removed it. They did, I don't know if they removed it, but the like K2 initiative or whatever it was called, they were gonna remove it there. I think technically it still has it. I'm not sure. But yeah, I would love if they added it back. And again, desktop in React. And I'm not just saying it because Microsoft is my competition as an operating system developer. Not at all. I'm actually not saying it because of that. They're not my I'm not their competition. Neither is Linux, to be completely honest. Only Mac is their competition. And even then, the price is kind of prohibitive. But I'm just saying it because I want to watch it crash and burn. Okay, so I don't know about any of these. Really, the only one that's like semi reasonable is RTF. Again, there is the Open Office XML, but XML. And the Open Document Format is also XML. I mean, let's see what it looks like. Wait, what's the OASIS committee? Organization for the Advancement of Structured Information Standards. Isn't that like the Vertio? Yeah, it looks like it. It's the Vertio people. Oasis Open. Yep. Interesting. I was wondering who published this spec. Which, by the way, quick reminder since I haven't worked with Vertio drivers in a while. They have this really beautiful thing where they have defined a bunch of devices. And this is the spec for all those devices, except for the ones that they deemed too niche to define. So, tiny little issue with that. Those devices aren't physical devices, they're virtual devices who exist only because of their specification. So we have devices that exist only in specification that they decided were too niche to define. Which means they genuinely just thought of it and were like, add it to the list. Yeah, let's add it to the list. That's it. That's all they did. I think that's really beautiful. They're like, yeah, let's create a specification for a device, a virtual device that we're inventing right now, and then let's not divide. Let's not define it because it's too niche. I think that's really beautiful. I think that's really funny. They had an idea. And that was that. They just had an idea. They didn't take it any further than that. Hello, SH. YouTube, at which point did we think that showing people's usernames that nobody actually thinks of was a good idea? I cannot read anyone's names on YouTube. Alright, so I think I'm gonna go with rich text format for the terminal. I'm just gonna be using it as a little bit of a, to be fair, I don't even need to implement that. I just need to implement colors. Because what else can you do in the terminal? Can you really make text bold? Is that a thing? I think it is, maybe? Is that a thing or am I making that up? That is bold, right? The config.txt, for example? Like the O, can I zoom into this? Not really. Yeah. Can you zoom in more without closing that every single time? Yeah. That's definitely bold. You can tell the O here is thinner than this O. So it is bold. Also color. Italics? I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. Is that a thing? I can actually just look at what ANSI escape sequences exist and just base it off that. So they support colors like this. Cursor. Which, to be fair, rich text format doesn't really support cursor. Not that it doesn't really support cursor. It straight up does not support cursor. Because, like, there's no reason for that. Because the terminal is just like how to render this text into a printer, actually. Like, way back in the day, terminals were actually printers before they even had screens. Which is why this kind of stuff, to be fair, you had a lot less control over what you printed. But yeah, I'm kind of talking on my ass with that one. It's not like I know anything about it. But yeah. Alright, so some ANSI control sequences. You have cursor control. erase in display, erase in line, scroll up, scroll down, horizontal, vertical position, select graphic rendition, set colors and styles of characters following this code, aux port off, and device status report. And that select graphic rendition is the one that did the color. Okay, so it's cursor control and then color control, as well as format, like underline, slow blink, and whatnot. So yeah, I'm probably better off not implementing anything like RTF because it doesn't make much sense. And instead implementing my own format that can be similar to that. And then if I really wanted to, I could, when I'm outputting to other serial devices, like even just this serial device, like the actual host machine's console, even do a translation between my code and escape sequences, which would allow me to maintain formatting. But IDK, I'm just going to do my own format. All right. So, format control, screen control, and there is also scroll, to be fair, which I skipped over. Erase, scroll, and then control the cursor. All right, so those are the capabilities that I need to implement. Now, if kind of don't remember how I did this, to be completely honest, but I did implement clearing the screen. Oh, I kind of did that manually. It's just a structure that you define here. So what to do, because again, my terminal has different display types. It can display a document and it can display a table, or it can display raw text, and maybe eventually it can display other things. But when it is rendering this structured data and it receives new data, do I want it to wipe or scroll? So I implemented that, but that has nothing to do with the control sequences. Yeah, we're not really gonna implement any kind of terminal because, I mean, emulate any kind of terminal because that's not what I'm trying to do. Although, yeah, I'm not really interested in emulating this shit because, like, genuinely, no. So yeah, I want to do my own formatting. I don't want to do escape sequences because they're genuinely unreadable. Although, again, I could do something like RTF, right? Because it would literally look like this for bold, and I do need to take a look at it because again, I've barely worked with it. Wasn't there a list? Ah, here. Alright, so we got bold off, bold on. Why would you turn it on and off? Just do this. Ah, whatever. Ah, that makes sense. underline, subscript, superscript. It can handle all of these things. And that makes it really, I find it to be particularly readable. Way more than Mother of God. Mother of God. That also sets red foreground. That's not very readable now, is it? There is one thing I didn't consider. This formatting here is technically an escape sequence of its own. The escaped B is... I don't think I'm using it for anything. Oh yeah, hold on. Okay, it worked here. Though it kind of wasn't supposed to. Well, in my terminal this would have never worked because it doesn't actually print this. It just gets printed to this console, but not here. Because the terminal is using a different display type, so it doesn't show prints. But yeah, it does that. But like, this is way more readable than this. Which is why I don't want to use escape sequences. It's also all these escape sequences. Again, if I don't want to do this specifically and I want to do my own format, first off, what character is this? It is a valid value. So I find that that would be more readable. Even kind of copying the format from this one, but not too much. Because I am already using this, so I don't want to confuse them. I don't particularly care about compatibility or if people have issues using it. Because this is exactly how we end up with a format from the 1970s still being the way of doing this kind of shit that doesn't make any sense. Nobody ever bothers saying, hey, maybe we have a better way of doing this now? So I absolutely could not care less about the way that terminals work. It's stupid. At some point we should have admitted this. How does RTF separate between Boop. That is low-key very unreadable. If you look at it like this. Font TBL, F0, F Swiss, Helvetica. Okay, so they use also this character to separate? I'm not so sure. Code syntax, I guess this is the section I was looking at. The backlash introduces a control word which is specifically programmed command for RTF. Control words can have certain states in which they are active. Okay, so maybe I do want to use it like that. The problem is when you write it in the terminal, you technically have to write it like this, right? Because you're printing this character itself, not the escaped sequence. Otherwise it considers this to be a character. So that kind of makes it inconvenient. Although, a delimiter is one of three things: a space, a digit or hyphen, and a character other than a digit or letter. Alright, so that makes it a little bit easier to develop a similar format, but without using... I definitely don't want to use RTF. The more I look at it, the uglier it gets. It's like almost good, but Microsoft made it, so you know it's bad. So I would much rather use something like this, even, where again, a space acts as a delimiter, and you can do you can do bold text. I mean, I do want to copy some stuff. Italics. It's not like I support either of these things, by the way. I don't support any of these, so it's not like I care too much about them. But it is... that... Underline I'm okay with. Subscript and superscript also. How do you specify color in it? Oh, that's very ugly. Controlling the cursor with this I don't like, but then again I don't like controlling the cursor through the damn printer. But then again, I also don't want to have to do it through a separate file like I'm doing everything else. So long as I'm using structured data, it makes sense to use a different file to send raw data instead of the print. But I don't love this, but it wouldn't be necessarily a problem to do it like this. Alright, so again, bold isn't even a thing, so I'm just gonna do a color. I don't know about this format, but I definitely want it to be hexadecimal. Because I don't think I'm gonna be introducing like standard colors. So we can do it in hexadecimal. Let's say that we want to make this... Wait, hold on. I should not be doing it through here. Doesn't make any sense to do it through here, where the only terminal that should be able to render this doesn't actually render anything that gets printed after this point. So it makes much more sense to put this directly in the terminal code, because the terminal renders this stuff. Alright, so... it would kind of make sense to put it here, to be honest. Because then the console can control this stuff. Hey, Red Falcon. It's been a while. How you been? Alright, let me see. My dog, he's headless. He has his head shoved in a blanket. So, that little black thing you can see over there, that's his ear. All right. Well, again, first off, let me define what the format is going to look like and then parse it. Or at the very least, a very basic version of this format. So the terminal, which, by the way, I cleaned up my code in the terminal. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the terminal should be handling only the visual part of everything. Running commands and everything is handled by the shell. So, yeah, the terminal's like taking a cursor and whatnot. And that's it. That's all it needs to do. Alright. I actually did that, but I didn't check if that's all it did or if there was still some leftover code. But from the looks of it, yeah, the terminal just handles running commands and whatnot, or handles the shell, but it doesn't actually handle the actual command execution. That's handled by the shell. Okay, now, one thing that the terminal does do is render the structured data, or is it no longer the terminal? Yeah, that's now handled by the shell. I forgot about that. So, alright, here it is. This is where I want to put a little bit of formatting. Right, so for example, oh, I wouldn't mind this syntax. Although, maybe I would like to be able to register a color palette in my thing, but okay, right now it's just gonna be RGB in hex format like this. Right, so I want this to render in red, and I'm gonna try a few more. I'm gonna do 3 of them as R, G, and B. Right, so this should render in red, this should render in green, this should render in blue. Except right now, because none of the actual thing is implemented, then it just renders in well, that's weirder than I expected it to be. Oh no, never mind. Why did I think this was going to be like 1 per field? It's a different types of fields are going to render differently. Okay, so I need to think about this a little bit more. Although I do have exactly 3 types happening here. This one here is an FF, so it's an I32. So this is being rendered like that. This is not. There's no 8-bit characters being printed here. But there are strings. So strings are going to have the red. And size should be a 64-bit integer, so that one is going to handle blue. Alright, so if I did everything right, our text formatting should be handled by... Yeah, there we go. All of them have a text format for them. Although this symbol should also be inside, not outside. And also these could possibly be escaped. Is that not unknown escape sequence? Yeesh. Why though? This is character 123, and this is character 125. I guess I don't really need an escape sequence. If anything, I want... Yeah, okay, just leave it like that. Okay, so we have a little bit of text formatting happening. Now we need to actually have the terminal, or the console, be able to handle this formatting. And this should be done, I believe, through a state machine is probably the easiest way for me to do it. And ideally, I'm going to move all the behavior for that outside of the terminal itself, just the terminal talks to it. So I can do it in C instead of C++. And if you ever want to have a compatible system, you can just use escape sequences for real. All right. This counts as data formatting, right? I'm not sure where to put it. No, it doesn't. It's not really data formatting. It's rendering. So I'm not sure where to put it. I'm just going to put it here. Unless I have... No. Well, it's not just text formatting. It's also like... Yeah, it's going to handle like cursor stuff as well. I think. So... I'm just going to put it with the shell. I don't want to call it escape sequences either. Wikipedia, your top of the page should help me. In-band signaling. Embedded format, I'm going to call it. And again, I do want to leave it open for other formats if I eventually get around to including escape sequences, which don't count on it. But if I ever get around to it, I'll essentially implement a text formatter that can have multiple implementations. I mean, I'll define a text formatter that can have multiple implementations. And I noticed that typo there. Okay, embedded format. This is going to handle holding the information for us. So, caller, current caller. It can also handle the cursor once we get to it. It can also handle, what was the other thing? Wiping, probably. Which should be like a boolean. But right now it's only going to handle... Oh, I don't know. I'll eventually want to add cursor control and screen wiping and whatnot, but since I don't have those right now, we're just going to focus on caller, which is the one that I'm trying to implement right now. Although I will need cursor control before I implement proper TUIs. I can guarantee you types is being used, but shut the fuck up, Clanger. Alright, do I need to initialize this? Not really. I dropped out of college. Can't really say I have a major. Embedded FMT parse. Well, it should have a whole like state machine to it. Right now I'm just gonna define as void pointer because I needed to silence the warning. I mean the error. But Okay, so this is going to be the thing that does the actual parsing. And again, I want to implement it in a... I have like my headphones in my pocket. Oh, my AirPods. They're bothering me. Uh, yeah, I'm going to need to implement some kind of state machine to handle this type of thing. I'm not sure entirely how to structure it right now. But anyway, what do I call my formatter? The terminal text format, TTF. Is that taken? That's taken, isn't it? Dutch TTF, natural gas futures pricing. Oh, the true type font, yeah. Oof. Yeah. Um, kind of forgot that true type font, which is also like text related, so I really cannot call it that. Terminal control format. I feel like I'm gonna find something really weird, so I'm just gonna... France Education International. I said I was gonna find something weird. Thank God I'm not showing this. Alright. Yeah, I feel like you're not gonna confuse the terminal control format with the French. I forgot what it was called. It doesn't even stand for TCF in French or English, so I'm not sure where they got that name from, but anyway. Um, okay, so why are you giving me so many errors? I can guarantee you color is a thing. Wait, do you not have it? Do you not actually have a definition of color? Is that in graphic types? Oh, okay. Never mind. I couldn't guarantee you anything. I was lying. Little joke there. Um, Alright, so kind of the problem that I have here is that we have to do text parsing per character, right? When you receive this sequence, you have to parse every one of these manually, which really sucks. Hey, Peter. Because I do have to build like the entire thing, don't I? I guess it makes sense why ANSI uses numbers. It's a lot faster to do it that way, but again, it's so unreadable. Alright, so I forgot I have a parser already. So that's the whole thing. Because I kind of don't want to do it manually, and I also don't want to use a generator, especially since I have one. But is that really... That feels incredibly complex. It might just be the best way to do it. I mean, I can think of something else, but it's not amazing. First off, the easy thing is this. Again, it kind of has to be stateless, or it has to store its state somewhere. That's the part that makes it kind of difficult. It's the fact that you have to do this somewhat manually. Alright, so let me do what do I call it? The terminal control format state. Alright. So first off, about the data signature, which is really just an int64 if I'm not mistaken. Yep. We can check if it's not equal to this data signature, TCF. And if that's the case, we don't do anything because this isn't our formatter to use. We're using a different one. Well, not really. There's two cases. If it has a value that's a different value from the current formatter that we're using, and that means we're using a different format other than this one, so we're not supposed to handle this. Otherwise, if there is no state type, then we can freely assign it to this thing. And create that formatter in question, which we have to allocate. Formatter state equal to a z allocation of a size of DCF state. All right. And then we can safely cast DCF state to this thing so we can work with it. All right, so I can think of a kind of ugly way to do it, but it might not even be a super bad idea. This technically won't allow nesting, but it's okay. What I want to do is, if we initiate a sequence, we set in sequence to true. And if we don't initiate a sequence, we set in sequence to false. Right. Then, any other character is going to be written to the buffer, so long as we have space in it. And also probably want to define a TCF max buffer of 16, just so I can have it defined. And I can change that eventually. if the cursor is smaller than this thing, then we want to store inside of the buffer using the cursor the character that we were just given. Then we can insert the kind of special terminators, special characters, which are delimiters, they're called. This character, the colon, I was blanking on the name of it, which delimits the end of the command, or the first part, and the beginning of the arguments. Comma, which is going to be used to separate arguments. And, of course, space, which is going to be used for ending the entire command sequence. Right, so on top of that, I can kind of make this like this. Okay. So I can allow nesting for this entire thing. Opening a bracket is going to increase the current sequence that we're in, and closing a bracket is going to decrease the sequence that we're in. Also keeping track of the fact that if the in sequence is less than 0, then we're going to print... Oof, maybe printing here is going to be a bad thing. So we can't really do that, I believe. But we do have an error. So we can kind of return false. And again, more and more I find that leaving a return type as void is usually a waste of space. It's a waste of a reporting type of behavior. Right, so we just return false, meaning there was an error of some sort. Okay, cool. So with that, I should have nesting, but I have to be careful when it comes to nesting. We only allow it if we're not currently defining the command. So that means I can do something like color and then the hexadecimal here, and then this, where I can do bold, and then text here, and that's going to make this text both bold and using white color. But I cannot do this, because that's not valid. Right. So, essentially, if we're inside of a command sequence, so at the very beginning of the command, before we find the space, then we're going to return false. We're not going to parse this character because it's not the beginning of a sequence. However, if we do begin a sequence, then we're going to say, hey, by the way, now I need the command. Or actually, better off if I make this, instead of a command, I make it a type, like an enum. Can I do this? I think I can, but if I do it like this. Okay, command state command sounds kind of dumb, so I'm just gonna call it the TCF command. TCF. Right. So when we're parsing this stuff, we can be in one of three states. We could be parsing this, we could be parsing the argument, or we could be parsing the actual, well, reading the actual value. Okay, so when we begin, if it has a value other than none, so we can still keep this check, although it's better to do it like this. If it has a value other than none, we're currently parsing either the command or argument for a sequence, so we cannot begin another sequence, so we return false. Otherwise, we begin a sequence and we say command. We expect to find a command right now. And if we end the sequence, then we return to none. Because we're doing nested sequences, but we don't allow sequences before the command and argument are parsed, so... Alright. Okay, so we begin expecting the command. Then we get the command here. At this point, everything in the buffer is the command. And we're going to parse the command from the buffer. Again, we can't really print, so we'll have to handle that in a minute. But since I'm doing the state transitions, we are going from command to argument. Because if we put a semicolon, then the rest is going to be the argument. All right. That is if the current state is command. So if the current state isn't command, we're also going to return false. Because otherwise, we can just put another semicolon at the end of that, and that's technically not correct. Okay. So everything in the buffer is the command. Again, I would print it at the very least if I could, but I can't really do that. So I'm going to kind of have to one-shot this entire thing. All right. Another thing that I'm kind of not considering is the state has to be different than none if we want to do any of this parsing. If the state is currently none, then that means we've already parsed the command. Now we're just parsing the actual value of it. And so we don't really care to do any of that parsing. We don't want to do anything in that case, but we do want to return true to say that everything went well. It's just none of our business. Because you can actually write these characters, and spaces, obviously, inside of your formatted text, which is not formatting the text itself. All right, so again, if we're currently in a command, and we use this, it means we're now going to go to an argument. So we're done parsing this. We find this. We're now going to parse the argument, which is this. Arguments can be comma separated, so we expect to be in an argument. And everything in the buffer is a command. But it's an argument. But we don't know what exactly is in that argument. What just happened to my ad manager? Twitch, please, could I not be constantly babysitting you? Oh, my ad manager just stopped working. Alright. Does that mean no ads? Or perpetual ads? Or, again, Twitch, why do I have to constantly babysit you? Buddy. Are you good? You good? Yes? Alright. His ear is a little bit... He gets... They're not ear infections. He just gets like a little bit irritated because of allergies. And yeah, he does that a lot. Jester, if you do that, you're gonna make it worse. Which is also why you cry, because you're sticking your entire paw inside of your ear. Alright. Oh, my ad manager is back on actual Twitch, not on OBS. Alright, Jester, come here. Come. Go. Alright. I'm gonna take care of him for a second, I'll be right back. Okay, dog is taken care of. Which sounds like I took him out back and shot him, but no, I just gave him ear medicine. He's fine. But he's not here, so I'm gonna replace him. He's gonna be back in like 2 minutes. Alright. Where was I? Alright, so we're parsing commands, we're parsing arguments, spaces. Depends on the current state, what the space currently is. There's two possibilities. We might be in a command or an argument, so we need to check for that. I could just make a little, hold on, probably gonna make this easier. Since the state and the buffer are both held inside of here, I can just tell it to TCF parse type using the state. And really not care about what I'm actually doing. What's up? He's back. And he's not done with that. Oh, my ad manager is actually back on OBS. Cool. Alright. So yeah, the actual parsing of the commands and whatnot is going to be handled by this function, but I don't have to deal with that right now. I'm just handling the state transitions and whatnot. Okay. So, we find a space while currently parsing a command. That means we're done parsing the command regardless of what it used to be. As long as the state wasn't none, we were inside of a command. And now the state becomes none. Which means we're done parsing until we find another beginning of a sequence. Cool. Right. So that's easy. Wait, I don't need to pass it that. I need to pass it both the formatter and the state. By the way, return false. The reason that I'm doing that is the formatter technically contains the state, but there's a little bit of casting happening. So for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to pass you both of them. Since we need to store whatever information we got here, and well, here, no, here, yes, and the information is stored in the state here. Okay. Now, in the actual embedded formatting type, there should be an embedded format feature, which right now is only color, but eventually will embedded FMT color. Eventually will also include cursor and screen control. So I'm just gonna define them, even though right now we don't really have anything to do with them. All right. So the state, there's also supposed to be a none. Embedded FMT invalid. And I wouldn't mind an embedded FMT count. Right, so we can count how many there are, including the invalid value, which kind of sucks. And also 0 is not a valid value, which usually saves me a bunch of headaches. Yeah, the count is kind of useless. Although, yeah, I'll keep it. Current feature. I just realized when it comes to nesting, it won't really work too well, but whatever. I'm not sure, can ANSI be nested? Like, I can say make, no, not, well, I can say make this section red, then within that section make it green, then stop making it green, then stop making it red. Will it go back to being red when it's done being green? Is that a thing that you can do in ANSI, or... I don't think you can tell it to stop being a certain color. You just replace that color with another one. So, yeah. Probably not a problem that that one has. It might be a problem that mine has. Anyway. Alright, so first thing is we need to store the current feature, and then we need to store some kind of arguments. I don't really have multiple arguments. Jester, if you don't leave your ear alone, it's gonna hurt. I don't know what to tell you, man. I mean, you would think he would learn that lesson on his own, but apparently not. Alright. So again, based on the type. State... First off, if the current type is... What did I call them? TCF state none, then return false. We didn't actually do anything. Then we're going to handle the others. Well, hold on. No, I'm not going to put it in a switch statement because it might get a little bit complicated. So the switch statement is going to be very unreadable. But oh, I guess I'll write it, and then if I need to, I'll format it into a switch statement. Right now I'm okay with having it like that. Okay. So if what we're parsing is a command, we can just compare the buffer against the commands that we support, which right now is just color. And it should be enough to do if, well, first off, to get a string slice, of the current command, which we get from the buffer and the buffer cursor, which indicates... Oh, by the way, I'm not resetting this when I need to. The buffer cursor indicates the length of it. Oh, that would be state buffer and the state cursor. Yeah, here, and here, we're moving from one state to another. Even if we stay within the same state, we need to reset the buffer. So since we're not relying on null terminated strings, all we need to do is put the cursor back to 0. Alright, so this is going to give me the string slice of the current command, and this is really just about comparing it to the only one that I support, caller, case insensitive, because I don't care about that. And the current feature, the state current feature, gets set to embedded format caller. Okay. Then the argument depends on the current feature, I guess. So yeah, this is getting a little bit complex. Because, well, I'm gonna put a switch on it. Now I do think I'm okay with using a switch. I didn't even have time to finish pasting this, and it's already telling me, 5 enumeration values not handled in switch. Which, thank you for that. It's completely useless. Anyway, caller is the one that we're going to handle. Everything else is going to be defaulted to doing nothing. Alright, so what do we do if we're trying to parse a color? Well, we have to specify which color that is, which we do with an unsigned 64 hexadecimal that we take from the argument itself, which hex parse hex, here we go, from the buffer and the buffer cursor as the length. That is going to give me a supposedly hexadecimal color, and then, or 0 if it fails, which is going to set it to black. And then I want to explicitly set its transparency, oh my god, to full by setting ff to the alpha argument of that. And finally, we've done this. We're done handling a command. And what we need to do is to set the formatter's color to the hexadecimal value that we just received. This is why I didn't want to use switch statements. They're kind of a pain in the ass. But anyway, there we go. That should give us parsing for this stuff. And another thing I kind of didn't consider is when we end the whole sequence, Well, we need to reset the state. TCF, holy dyslexia. I was literally thinking TCF and typing FCT. TCF reset format. And again, nesting isn't super useful right now. I'll make it more useful later. But right now I want to set the current color to 0. Alright, and when we finish a sequence, we wanna TCF reset format with the formatter, and that way we go back to our black color. Since we only support very simple syntax right now, it's okay, but again, technically it doesn't allow proper nesting. Because once you close the innermost nested property, you reset all of the other ones. But we only have one possible property, so for now that's fine. Anyway, formatter should be ready for handling colors now. It just needs to be plugged into the terminal or the console. I believe the console is probably the best place to put it. But before I crash out about C++, gotta remember that. Otherwise, it's gonna say that it can't find the symbol, and I'm gonna be like, what do you mean? It's right there. And I'm gonna be like, oh god damn it, it's fucking C++. I need to use the extern C keyword for it. This always happens, so I'm just getting ahead of myself here. Alright, and then actually still within here, I just realized I could literally just put it right here, where I already have the console code. So yeah, anyway. No, not define. What the hell am I doing? I'm supposed to include this code. Include the embedded format header, which again technically allows multiple implementations, but right now only has one. And we want one of these embedded formats, current format, which is going to eventually replace this text color and background color and default text color and background color. I'm going to have to get rid of those. So now we rely on this instead. Right, you can set the background color. Ah, that's another one. Okay, so I'm going to use that as the second type of property that I support. Right now we're just going to do text color. Right, and the simple way of doing that, boop, just get rid of what was there before. It's going to break my code, and then I'm going to fix it by doing this. Alright, well no, I do need a default text color, because maybe you don't specify a current format. No, not really. Hold on, where am I using this default text color? Okay, it's color white. Can I specify it in here? Is that allowed? C++? Do you think? Oh, maybe. Hold on. In the header file? You're not complaining? Although I do need to zero initialize these two. And you need to explicitly initialize them. Field designator does not refer to any type in embedded format. I literally copied it from it Hello? Oh wait, did I write the property type? Yeah, data signature is supposed to be state type. Okay, so I can do that, and I can have a default text color. That is cool. So I don't have to support this one at all. And now I can just use the current format, current color here, as well as here. And the sec text color is gonna go away. Entirely. Which used to support the first iteration I did of this, which was a much simplified version of ANSI escape sequences. I kind of hated it. At some point it got removed, and I'm not entirely sure when that happened. Now maybe I do want to set a default text color here. Call it default color. Default text color. This should be called current text color. Right, so you refer to the current text color, and resetting it sets the formatter's current text color to the default text color. So that behavior will be handled by it. Alright, this is the current text color. Well, I can set it as the default text color. And then I have to set both, don't I? Fucking C++ require me to initialize each value independently. Now I have more issues, because current format dot current color became current format current text color. Okay, back to fixing the terminal now. The default text color, you're going to set that in the current format default text color. And you frankly don't need to worry about this stuff. That's none of your business. And this is also none of your business. Wait. Oh, this is for redrawing. Oof. Redrawing is going to be a problem because it's going to break formatting. And we're not storing that formatting anywhere. Set text color is no longer needed. Alright. So I'm going to have to think about that, because technically when the terminal gets full, we redraw the entire thing, and redrawing the entire thing means we need to know the colors of each thing individually, which we don't have right now. So I have to figure that one out. But for the time being, I have other more pressing concerns, which is to actually implement the parser. Which should handle all types. And I made my parser return bool, but I'm not gonna do that. Like, we're not gonna fail just because we got an invalid value. Current format and C. Alright. If I did everything right, we should have some red color. Well, some RGB color, actually. Well, everything is white, which it wasn't before. That's kind of weird. Oh! Okay. I forgot to not print those characters. That's Okay, so I do need this. But kind of the other way around. In that, if you fail to parse, you return false. And if you do parse, you're actually not returning shit. So that's kind of a problem. Alright, so if you parse the character, we won't actually show it on the console. So that did work, but it also showed... Okay, there we have it. It's ugly as hell. So I used the most basic colors. But it is rendering with the text colors as I expected. Alright, there's an ad running. It's the second ad, which means I completely skipped over the first one. I didn't even realize it happened. But I'll be back in 3 minutes. And maybe I'll do background color. Maybe I'll move on. I guess I'll see. Okay, we're back to reinventing ANSI escape sequences from first principles, ideally. It's going well. I like it more. I find it way more readable than that mess that is the escape sequences. But it doesn't work in normal terminals. Oh no. Anyway. It works, which is what I care about. And it was relatively simple to implement. 84 lines of code, not bad, not bad, not bad. Alright, so I implemented it for text format. And again, I technically allow it to nest, but I'm not handling nesting correctly. Because I'm just not supporting that. But that's fine. So, don't care much about nesting right now. But I was thinking, do I want to support text color, or do I want to support actual commands that you send to the terminal? Because of course this should support some commands such as wiping the screen or a line and then setting the cursor, which will allow me to do actual UIs with it. I said I was going to look at code for how TUIs are rendered, but honestly I'm dreading doing that, so maybe I'm going to leave that for tomorrow. And then instead I'm going to handle a wipe as just a boolean. This is going to be very, very simple. Literally all we need for it is just see if the command is wipe, in which case the current feature gets set to embedded format screen. Then immediately, no, not the state, the formatter's wipe gets set to true. That's it, that's all you need to do. And then we can handle a wipe from here. Should be as simple as that. Alright, so to test that this works, it's technically controlled by the terminal, so where's those prints that I did? Why am I not seeing them? Why am I not seeing them? They're in the shell. Forgot about that. I moved them to the shell. Alright, since I kind of need to test and I'm too lazy to test properly, yeah, what I need to do is I just need to set this program back to its normal mode, not using structured data, and then use that to test. Right, so don't set config. All of this will be ignored if I'm not mistaken. We will get this printed. Let's make it a maybe nicer color. Let's say that, or even that. What the hell, why not? Serialize data, and then we are going to sleep the process for... We're already sleeping, okay, so... I'm just gonna put it here. Then I'm gonna do another one where I first wipe the screen and then set the color to that one. Or not. C++ and its fucking boilerplate. Alright, so we're still showing that, which we shouldn't. Yeah, I feel like I kind of... Alright, and the drawn text is kind of wrong. Okay, that's kind of interesting. First off, these documented versions probably shouldn't appear in the terminal. I'm not sure if I want that behavior. Technically, I can put tables and put data on the terminal without needing to switch its mode. But I can't really decide if I should render a single document or a table. I'll keep it like this for now. Okay, so it didn't wipe. It also got these colors wrong, but it got these perfectly right. So that's kind of interesting. Even though the formatting is essentially the same. First off, did not wipe. And I have to say, I was kind of hoping this would work on the first try, because if it doesn't work on the first try, I have to debug it without printing. I don't think I can print. What happens if I do? It's just kind of stuck there. So that answers my question. I have to debug it without printing. Pretty sure that actually led to a stack overflow, which my system didn't catch. Kinda don't have a way of catching stack overflows, I believe. I probably should. Oh well. Stack overflows can happen, who cares? Anyway. Now to actually debug the damn thing without having actual printing here. That's gonna be painful. Alright, first off, I do expect it to be set to wipe and wipe false. So I'm gonna start with that one. And that should call clear, which calls screen clear and sets all the data to 0 in the buffer where we store the information. So yes, that sounds good. That's okay. That means the problem is probably in the parser, where if it matches to wipe, same way as it does with color, it sets the current feature to screen, it sets wipe to true, and then that's really all it does. Eventually it returns true. And it already does the wipe, but then it stays within the current format because it needs to be terminated. So shouldn't wipe have been set to true? How do I even like check that this is happening? Oh, when this handles it. I'm starting to see the problem. Um, mm, 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 mm. When embedded format parse, render gets set to false. We do this stuff, and then if no render, we return. So there are going to be some behavior that we want, even when we're not supposed to render, some other that we don't. So that still wiped nothing. And I cannot print. This really sucks. Can't do any debugging in the actual printing. Like with printing. I'm not about to use GDB, so I'm just working blind. No, is there actually anything I can do? GDB is such a pain in the ass to set up. I don't want to do that. I wish it was this simple. Even if I did have the integration, it's never this simple. GDB always breaks. It actually introduces more bugs than it fixes, in my opinion. So... Okay, one thing I do want to see, though, at the very least, did it fix the off by one error in the string that it was rendering? I thought it did, but no. The S is still showing us white. Why is it showing us white when the color has already been changed for it? I have no idea. But anyway, alright, so we have two bugs happening now. I have to be so honest, I don't see the difference between this one and this one, where one of them renders fine but the other one doesn't. Would be really funny if it was that. No, it's not. Okay. Thank God. Alright, so about the wipe. It is parsing it as a command. It doesn't have a space, technically. But it should reset the formatter. Again, it's so hard to work blind off this thing. What can I do about that? I mean, let me try it in here. Okay. Yeah, here it works. And now the off by one error is fixed. But the wiping didn't work. Alright, but the thing is, if I put very simple prints, we won't enter an infinite loop of calling this function inside of itself, so we'll be fine. Just gonna put a 1 here. See if it's detecting that. Yes, I am using Z. And it didn't detect it. And also the off by one error is back. That's weird. What the hell? Wait, there is one thing I can do. Just a syscall version of this. We'll print, but no arguments. Alright, so the wipe is there. You're seeing it. What is the problem? I don't really understand. Wait. Okay, the current feature gets set to wipe. So it does find it, and it checks if it matches. Not sure what I'm doing. One thing's for sure, you should set the buffer cursor to 0 and maybe memset the buffer to 0 using the current cursor that we had for it. That way it's going to make this prints a little bit clearer. Because I have no idea what's happening right now. Okay. That's a bit easier to read. Okay, so I'm starting to understand what's happening. First off, this is only being parsed once, which would kind of explain why we have an off by one error there. Then it's parsing color from this. No, wait. Alright, so the terminal is receiving all of these characters. And parsing color from them. It's kind of off by one a little bit. And then it reads wipe color, not wipe. And the probable reason for that, I'm starting to realize, we're resetting the format but not resetting the state. So when I write wipe in it, then I go here. Yeah, first off, I need to parse the current command. That's not being parsed. That's the problem with it. So it reads a wipe, but it doesn't actually parse it. And then it reads the next one into the same buffer, which is why it never wipes the data. And now it does. Okay, so that bug is fixed. There is still a really weird off by one error happening here, in which the first character is not detected. Only in these, not in these, for example. Is it because of this character? I doubt it. But it's worth checking. Not in the terminal. All this code is in the shell. Alright, so let's say that i64 doesn't have that. So one of them is going to print no, that looks fine. That one renders fine. This one doesn't. I don't understand what's happening with that one. Even though, again, the formatting is very similar to this one. Same error here. Wait, it's even weirder than that. Alright, first off, I don't like it being able to emit data. If it's not supposed to. So you want to check that the display type is not equal to text. You don't want to render tables in text mode. You don't want to render text in table mode. Alright, so that's better. And the bug still happens. And it also still renders new lines. Which I don't think that it should. Or I don't know, there's random spaces here that I don't understand. But anyway, alright, so the wiping works. And frankly makes it a little bit weirder to read, so just gonna... I forgot to actually remove the wiping. What? How did I jump up there? Oh, that just got worse. Now it's genuinely just doing whatever it wants. It stopped rendering the text that was supposed to render here. Even though that text is still there. It still is off by 1 here, here, and here. And again, what happened to you? I'm so confused. Why is it getting worse? And it is actually parsing the 3 colors. Alright, so once again. We began, first off, by parsing. This should display in raw text and nothing else. So you start by creating it, getting that state. You don't find this character, you don't find this character. And the state is currently set to none, so none of this happens, you go into false. This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. You go into here, and you just render your characters as normal. And then, for whatever reason, you decide to stop rendering after the first character. But this is new. It wasn't happening before. Then you encounter this one. You actually do enter this state, in which you're supposed to already be here. You increase the current sequence that you're in, and you say that you're expecting a command. So next time you will find color, you'll go in here, where you will find characters to put in a buffer. You'll then go in here, you'll be inside of a command, so you will parse that command, and you are doing that. You'll then expect an argument and reset the buffer back to 0. Now, I'm not mem setting that buffer, but it should be fine. It should be unnecessary when we have strings delimited by their size. We're setting the size back to 0. It's the entire point of it. Then you will find characters belonging to the color. And then you will find the space, in which case you will parse the type, which is a color. You'll go into non-state, so you won't be doing any of this stuff anymore, and you'll reset the buffer back to 0. Which technically isn't even necessary because this is already doing that. So you'll find this character, you'll return true, you'll set to none, which means unless it's this character or this character, nothing happens to it. Okay, so I'm very confused as to what's happening now. So how about I put this here? Instead of just printing the color, you'll print everything. Okay, so these letters never make it into the actual buffer. That just got worse. Oh my god. Is it that every time I run this code, it just does something different now? Is that where we're at? Has the color just changed to completely ignoring the value of the color? Okay, it looks like we're at a point in which it just does whatever it wants. So if you want to set the color to that, for whatever reason, you go ahead and do that. Is it because of this? That doesn't make any sense, but is it because of that? Okay. Okay, no, wait, hold on. It's because of this. That's a very subtle but very noticeable change. Oh, thank God. That was horrifying. You change nothing and then the code stops work. It like breaks every time I run the code. It just breaks in a new way. But yeah, I made a very subtle but interesting change. Okay, so we're back to at least this making some semblance of sense. But again, I confirmed the worst here, which is that doing a great job. Verbal breakdown of this does an amazing job. Thank you. Okay, we're parsing valid data here. I don't see what your damn problem is. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to tell you. This probably would have taken me 5 minutes to debug if I could print at my heart's content, but I'm not allowed to do that. Just want to make clear that we parse the type once we receive this character. This character is not printable. Then we say, okay, from now on the state is none, which means from now on, including the first damn character, will not be put in any buffers. At least that's what it should mean. And since I'm limited in my printing, I'm just going to try something. Oh, by the way, before I try anything, is my first string... Okay, this is back to displaying, that's good. Okay, so the only problem is the off by one error happening here. Alright, so to fix that, I'm gonna have to hack a string together like that. But I can print the characters without actually... No, I can't. No, I can't. Alright. I'll do it if the formatters... Holy fucking hacking going on right now. If the text color is different than the default text color, then... Because the current console, it's not like it does any of that, so I might as well do that. Alright. Well, I'm definitely seeing something. I just don't understand what the fuck I'm looking at. Is that stale data in the stack or something? What could it possibly be? I mean, exactly where these characters are being printed. I don't know what these characters are, but these characters are being printed exactly where there are some sort of anomalies in the rendering. Here, at these three S's over here, as well as these spaces that I don't believe should exist. So if we look at the actual print, we have this should display in raw text and a bunch of stuff that we're not handling, then the prints directly. So I'm starting to see what the problem is, but I can't really say I understand it. Like, oh, what happens if I make this bigger? Technically, I'm still filling in only one character of it. I'm also not initializing it technically, so that's causing extra issues. Okay. Yeah, that was just printing random stuff, but again, it was doing it at such a specific place that it's really weird that you were doing that. This should display in raw text. So actually the serializer for the characters is a little bit slower than the syscall for printing. So that's why we get this in between. That's why it looks out of sync like that, but just because the parser is slower than the printer. But like, that's just a problem in this console, not really in this one. Um, and again, the fact that the current color is not equal to the default color and it still prints the first letter means the first letter should not be using the default color. It should be using its own color. So I'm very confused by this. Also, the fact that it only happens in this case. That it does not seem to happen that's weird. It does not seem to happen in the case of the other one. It only seems to happen in the case of this one. Like when I printed from the terminal, it was fine. When I printed from the shell, I mean, the default data that it prints this prints just fine. But something with the other one isn't printing correctly. Even though, again, the text color is technically different, so you should be rendering differently. Like, the S in serialized is supposed to be blue. Although... this formatting sometimes bothers me. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The theme is called Synthwave 84, I believe. That should be its name. Man, this is such an upsetting bug because it genuinely wasn't happening, then it started happening randomly. Fuck. And again, based on the print, everything looks correct. When you're rendering the S, the current color is different from the default color. Which means you've set it to something. And clearly you have, because you're rendering it. You receive this text, you receive the color, you serialized And the data is held by the console, which uses the current text color, so why are you not rendering it in the correct color? But then the next one you do. That is actually weird. I don't know why I want to blame S's. It would have been really funny if this actually rendered correctly, and the problem was just a letter S. But no, that was not the problem. Although, the color that it is using is not white. So that would explain why it goes into this if that I'm using for debugging, even though it shouldn't. Right, so real quick. Let's use the same color for all of them. And then any color that isn't this one. Fuck, no, that's stupid. Any color that is this one, you'll have to render, I guess. I could just disable the console when I initialize it and this wouldn't happen, but yeah. No. Explicitly, the color for all of these is the same because it's explicitly this color here. DATA should have this color. All of them should have this exact color, but instead the beginning letter does not. Sure? Hold on, let me try something then. Let me try starting the line on character 1, see what that does. That would be really weird if that was the... whatever is happening is really weird. Nah, it changes nothing. I'm kind of glad it changes nothing, because that definitely would have been really, really weird. But I'm kind of out of options here for what's happening. According to the formatter, everything is using the correct color. The entire string is supposed to render in this color, but the first character is not rendering in this color, even though the value is explicitly being passed as such. Just want to see something real quick though. Color is a uint32. It's not like I'm doing any weird witchcraft with it or anything like that. So genuinely, what the hell? The color is explicitly the one that I want for every character that I want. I am then passing that on to this function, and yet the only one that can possibly render cursor? Could the cursor be messing with it? It should still be using the current text color. That's... But yeah, okay, I'm gonna get rid of drawing the cursor real quick and see if that fixes anything. No, of course not. I am really running out of options for what's happening here. I'm really out of options here. It's setting the color to one thing, but then it's rendering it as another. How does that make sense? Also, no, I did an FF here. I don't know what to think anymore. Um, actually speechless. Again, this has happened a lot lately and I don't understand why exactly, but again, how do I debug it? The current text color is correct. We're passing it into this function. We get to this point. We return false. This function is being called from here. We don't go into this. We don't go into this. We don't go into any of these. We don't go into this. We store the value and then we render it with the current text color. Alright, I'm gonna put the same check here. Maybe the text color has been modified, but at this point I'm running out of... I kind of struggle to believe that that could possibly be the case. Alright, so how about you render only the ones that are supposed to have that color? Let's replay that again real quick. I want to play... I want to only render the characters that have FF66600 as their color. And yet it rendered the first character of every line. Can I assume then what did it is one of these other functions? Again, this one's not being called, I believe, unless it is. They're kind of worth checking. It's probably the cursor. Yeah, that looks like it. So, okay, I disabled the call to draw cursor. Yeah, hold on. Alright, so it's probably you. Where's the function call for this? Alright, so just put an early return here and see what happens. Now nothing renders. And now everything renders correctly. So draw cursor is causing this. But I see. Kind of. Yeah, I see the problem. I mean, not really? But like, kind of? What I'm thinking is that the draw cursor is redrawing the character after the string has already been rendered once. And again, we lose context of what the color for the string was supposed to be. It doesn't keep track of that. So because that one character is being redrawn when we do a new line, that's probably when it's happening, when we do a new line. Which explains Yeah, you can possibly get rid of this error if you put more stuff here. Because now the cursor is moving from here to here, which is why it worked in the other one. What an insane bug this is. No, come on. Brother, no. You weren't supposed to do that. Well, okay. I still think that's what's happening. I mean, just the fact that we're drawing the cursor. Where the cursor used to be, it empties it out and draws whatever character it's supposed to draw there instead. So if we don't render a cursor at all, kind of not sure why it's rendering here in the first place, but whatever. Because it's not updating it, then it doesn't re-render these characters, which again, I'm not sure it should be re-rendering them, but it is for whatever reason. And again, it kind of highlights, yeah, maybe it shouldn't be re-rendering these characters specifically. Maybe that is a bug. But the real underlying bug is that when we render to the buffer and then we wipe the buffer, we lose context of what the color was supposed to be. And unfortunately, I don't know that I can do much about it. Other than store a lot more information than I currently am. Storing essentially 64 bits plus 8 bits for every character in the console. Which seems expensive. But I will need to store the background color for that character. I'll need to store the text color for that character. And the text for that character. But I think I'm going to have to do that. Alright, so this here is storing the information inside of the char pointer that is the line of data being held, which is stored inside of this char pointer of row data. I mean, either I do that, or I store it separately in a different buffer, but it's very much still the same problem. I kind of don't like this. I'm not sure. Okay, hold on. Let me at least stage what I'm doing. And then a terminal character, which is actually made up of a background color. Do I really have to store it per row? Is there really no better way of doing this? There kind of isn't. I could optimize it later, I guess. The foreground color or text color, and then the actual character. So store that here. Nah, you know what? I'll separate them. Different buffers. Alright. Okay, so row background data. It's gonna have its own buffer for that. And row foreground data, which is the text color. So it's gonna have its own room for that. Okay, now row data gets initialized here. And also here it gets deinitialized. Is that a deconstructor? C++, you're the fucking worst. Alright. So I need to initialize these buffers to a caller pointer allocated based on the new buffer size times the size of caller. Alright. There's no need for this mem set. Z-alloc literally stands for zero allocate, so that data should be allocated to 0. Then, if we have old data, we should also have this old data. Alright. If we have old data and we have old rows and we have old columns, we're supposed to copy and this is kind of a pain in the ass. Maybe I should have put them all together. No. Alright, we're copying this many rows. Alright, using this char source and destination, that's fine. And this indicates how many columns we're pasting. Okay, so that's fine, that's fine, that's fine. So if we're copying, then we want to also copy to these two buffers, which, by the way, why is the indentation wrong all the time? Okay, so we want to mem copy to these two buffers from the old buffers. And how much is going to be W, which is the width of what we're copying, times the size of caller. Because so far we've been working with 8-bit strings, now we're working with caller. That should copy our data. And then row background data becomes new row background data. New background data. And we do this... the same thing we do with the foreground data. Alright, so all that gets copied. Hopefully. So I kind of don't want to write this code more. Then deleting the last character oh no. Wait, yeah, hold on. Okay. If I use this syntax, I believe it's going to automatically calculate the correct offset regardless of the size of the data structure, because it knows the size of the data structure, so it does some weird pointer arithmetic with that. Right, so the same thing that I'm doing for the line, you're also going to do for the color using the row background data. That's the line background. And you are going to index that to 0. I hope anyway. And you're going to do the same thing with the foreground. Again, I hope so anyway. Then for actually drawing the character, I'm going to get rid of this if. God, that was a weird debugging session. That was so trippy. Do the same thing here. Except the background color you're going to set to 0 right now. And the foreground color you're going to set to the current format, current text color. And then whenever you're re-rendering, here mainly, you don't use that. You have to use I'm only going to do it for the foreground color here. Although I should probably use it for both. Yeah. Row foreground data using this thing. And then the text color is going to be the previous line foreground color, which is actually a color pointer, not a chart pointer. Previous line foreground color using the same index as the other one. And that is going to go here to just be text color. And if I did that right, which I'm starting to doubt more and more, I can do the same thing for the background color. And I can get the background color as well, which I can then use here. Except I'm not going to do that part. So I'm not going to do this part either. That is going to be for the drawing cursor. The entire thing. I can just copy the entire thing. For the last place where we do it, scrolling also does the same thing. You know what? Let's keep it as it is for now. See if that fixes the cursor issue, and then... Okay, that fixes the cursor issue. Good. So, I'm doing it right. Okay. But, when it comes to scrolling and redrawing, which happens when you refresh the screen in some way, I also need to handle the same thing. And... it's kind of just the same boilerplate code, which I don't want to write right now because it's almost midnight. So I'm just going to put that in. Pretty much anywhere that I have this FB draw chart that I haven't done this. So this one handles it. This is what renders it at the current time. That's okay. This is what renders it when we draw the cursor. That's fine. This is the scrolling. So here as well. And then the last one should be in the redraw, which I already added. I complete this. Okay, so I'll need to copy the same thing that I did 2 times again. But essentially, we're now storing the background color and the foreground color for all our characters individually. Isn't that so amazing? It kind of sucks to do that, but I have to do that, I guess. So, oh well, it is what it is. And it just requires me to add a little bit of boilerplate for a situation which currently isn't happening. But I'm going to do it again, probably either later tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm going to end the stream now. And tomorrow, I'm actually going to get to building the Tui. The Ratatouille. There's already a Tui called Ratatouille, so I shouldn't call it that. But since we now actually have the ability to um, draw kind of background colors, I haven't really handled background colors. I might add that today as well if I have the time for it. Screw it, I do have the time for it. Um, blanking on what I was gonna say. Yeah, since I can technically change the background color and the foreground color and the character that goes somewhere, and the terminal can now handle that kind of stuff, then tomorrow we can get around to building a TUI. And we might make it a little bit uglier than, these kind of beautiful looking ones. Strong word. But yeah, a little bit uglier than this, because we don't have these kinds of characters. But since I do have a background color, I can literally just set this as a color. Again, a little bit blockier, a little bit uglier, but it should work. It should look okay. At the very least, it'll work. If I'm not mistaken, commands like htop. I don't have it installed. That's interesting. Top kind of does that. Well, for the PID user, like the tabletop of that looks like I want it. What about the see what I mean when I say GDB is really stupid? Yeah, this kind of stuff. I could have this just without the actual border inside of it, just the blue color, which is good enough for now. So I can handle not having kind of complex strings, and that will need like extra fonts and whatnot. So yeah, I can keep my 8-bit strings for the time being. All right, but that's for tomorrow. Should be able to start doing a little bit of very simple TUIs, and we'll get to that. I think to continue my C with nicer syntax and better meta programming. The finds are nice, but it would be nice if it could be a bit more advanced. Yes. I was actually handling something in my game engine, technically, but since my game engine uses ECS, I kind of created a register component function, which allows me to tell the engine that a certain type of component exists. And the thing is that I was calling that function whenever I first create that component. So you have a I don't know, what's a component? You have a transform, right? So this component is defined as a structure using this macro, which is just a struct for it. Then a table that holds it. Then a category, because I allowed filtering by certain component categories. And yeah, the first time you create a transform, so you have an entity and you're like, hey, this entity has a transform. The first time you do that, it registers transform so the engine knows that this kind of component exists. But I was having an issue in which I added events and also evaluators, which is check if a condition is true or not, pretty much. And interactions, which allow for an interactor type to interact with an object of a specific component type. sometimes I was registering these three things, events or interactions or evaluators, which are all tied to certain components. I was registering them before I was registering the component for the first time. And that meant that because the component wasn't registered, they didn't know what component I was talking about, and they failed to register properly. And so to fix that, I had to call register component. But there are some interaction cases. So I have this auto register component macro here. The problem is that there are some cases for events in which you register them with no components. There are some events that I consider to be global, and those events don't have a component. Because usually an event is like, this component from this entity made this thing happen to this component with this entity. Right, so it has like a source and a destination entity and a source and destination component. Sometimes one of those two can be null, like these. These are global event handlers for whenever there is an event that is info, warning, error, or message, so that I can show certain messages on screen. It calls this function. But that means that it has to come from any kind of component. It isn't tied to a specific component, so I have this 0. And the macro for this had the... Well, this is fully expanded. But it was kind of doing a... Oh, no, right, the error's fixed now. To register a component, you need to say where the list that holds all the components is. And when I was expanding the macro, this was expanding to 0_list, like this, which is not valid. And I really wished I had the ability to tell the define system, by the way, if this is 0, set it to 0. Don't append the _list to it, but just send 0 to it. But it doesn't really have a way to do that. I ended up kind of hacking it together by... How did I end up doing it? Right, yeah. When you register a component, you register a function called getComponentNameList. And then I explicitly registered one called get_0list, which just returns 0. So, honestly, if I had called the list just _list, this wouldn't have been a problem. Or list 0 wouldn't have been a problem. But because it starts with a 0, I wasn't allowed to do it. So I had to append this get to it. I had to make a getter for this list just so I could return 0 in the case that the list goes to 0. So like, you feel clever when you do macros that work, but you feel so dumb when you're working on a macro, and it kind of like, it would be so nice if it had this one feature. But the C preprocessor, honestly, you could just build your own preprocessor on top of the preprocessor, if you will. You could build your own preprocessor, which handles its own meta programming and whatever else you want to do with it. Then when it's done with it, gives you back C code, maybe even with a preprocessor macros in it. And then on top of that, compiles C. So you technically have 2 layers of meta programming. Or you can just replace the C preprocessor with your own. But of course, you can't actually change C syntax. And on top of that, you still need to mess with the compiler to do that. I'm just saying, if anyone loves the syntax of C in every single way that it works, but wants better meta programming, just make your own preprocessor. I would love to see that. couldn't be me. I do want to change the syntax of C in a few cases. I want lambdas. I want lambdas. That's the main reason. That's the main thing. I want lambdas. I miss my slightly functional programming from Swift. I like that Swift can low-key turn into a functional or declarative language whenever it's convenient for it, and then just be a completely imperative language otherwise. Also modules, yes. I'm so tired of header files. Yeah. And like string to type conversions can be nice to have. All right. So I'm done for the day. I have a little bit of boilerplate to add, but it shouldn't be too difficult. Native string type. That I'm okay with because I already handle that myself. I just have a struct for string slices. And sometimes, I have to say, the null terminated nature of C strings can be useful, so I do use it sometimes. But I don't necessarily mind those. Alright, so that's going to be it for today. Tomorrow I'm going to finish writing this little bit of boilerplate. And setting up, well, I'm going to do that off stream because it's boilerplate, it's not particularly interesting. And that's going to set the stage for being able to move the cursor through terminal commands and then be able to do TUIs with that. Since I think technically, once I'm able to, well, also the background color, which again is just copying and pasting code. I already have a place to put it. I just have to do the same parsing that I do here. Well, not here. Here. For, it's gonna be called background. Technically, I'll already have everything I need once I have the cursor, because I can just tell it to move to a specific place and paint, even if it's just literally like a space character, but with a specific background. That's all I need. But of course I'm gonna need a little bit of layout happening, and I am kind of considering making my rendering backend from my UI library adaptable, or like making it a different backend, which is gonna be the TUI backend instead of the pixel-based backend. Alright, so this is going to be a text-based backend. I guess I'll see. I'll look into that, but tomorrow I'm just going to do raw rendering of individual characters. And then I'll decide how I want to handle this. It would be really nice to have a backend for UI rendering, where I can just tell it like, okay, render this as normal, render this as text. Would be nice. But it probably wouldn't support most features that my UI library supports. It's just for the sake of simplicity of writing the actual syntax of the UI, as well as doing the layout calculations automatically. That would be nice. Alright, enough yapping for today. Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.